Well, hey there. Coming to you from a new location, my personal domicile. I wanted to do a little more personal video since I'm up to number 25, and I never thought I'd do video, and here I am doing this many. But I wanted to share like what some of my favorite records were of 2020. And first of all, I just want to say, any of you YouTube people who make videos or whatever, I have complete respect for you because you have to worry about lighting and not making things look cluttered and all this sort of stuff. And what a job that is in and of itself. And working with this mug, you know. So I know I'm not the most photogenic person in the world, but I appreciate that you guys are watching this and sticking with me through what's been a crazy year. So this is I want to take a little bit of a break and just kind of give you what my favorite albums of the year were. There's things that you're not going to hear that you would think like, why didn't he name that? You know, and look, Bubbling Under. Like my first choice, Bubbling Under the top 20 is what I'm going to give you, is a Bruce Springsteen record. I thought it was his best album since Born in the USA. It's like 20, 35 years ago. But there were so many good records this year. And I know that like critics tend to get hung up on certain records. And for me, I just go with what like warms my heart, I guess, the most. So sometimes you're going to see a record on here and you might be like, I don't know what that is. It's something that resonates with me and maybe you want to check it out. You know, that's sort of my job as a record store person, is to kind of like be true to myself and kind of share that with people, I think, as far as like what I'm really into. So some of the other artists that I had bubbling under that you're not going to hear on here: Elvis Costello, The Weeknd, Fontaines DC, Jason Isbell, Perfume Genius, Tame Impala, Margot Price, The Pretenders, Phoebe Bridgers, Bob Dylan, Dua Lipa, Lucinda Williams, and Taylor Swift. Run the Jewels. They're all over the place, really. So but I do want to give you the top 20, and I'm going to do them in order. I usually blogged these things in the past, but I thought, oh, more entertaining to do a video. So, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on each one because I don't want you to feel like you have to be here all day watching this. So, my number 20, I'm starting at the bottom, is Charlie XCX, How I'm Feeling Now, with her racy album cover there. Um, Very interesting modern pop record made during a pandemic. She had a couple of star producers, A.G. Cook and B.J. Burton, working on it. And it just shows what you can do when you have sort of limited Skyping resources. And it's sonically unbelievable. But it's a very like electro pop record, catchy. So if that's not your thing, I don't hate me for it. All right, number 19, Kylie Minogue, Disco. I just love her because her viewpoint is always so consistently optimistic, even in the face of all sorts of adversity. And this year, we particularly needed some optimism. It came at just the right time. She just sounds like she's having fun. If you like bands like Daft Punk, it's kind of like a modern vocal take on that kind of stuff. Just chirpy, good disco fun with kind of a retro bent to like the 70s and maybe even her early stuff, sort of like, you know, the Locomotion era. I Should Be So Lucky, if you know what I'm talking about. If you're as old as me, you know what I'm talking about. All right, number 18, Mark Almond, Chaos and a Dancing Star. This will also come as a surprise to some people because they're like, did Mark Almond have an album this year? I mean, here's a guy who's had probably 25 albums. At one time, he said, I don't think the world needs any more Mark albums. Yes, we do, Mark. You're great. He's a fantastic singer songwriter. Back in the early 80s, he did Tainted Love with Soft Cell. The song is like everywhere still. This was kind of an apocalyptic album that came out right before the pandemic, so it's sort of foreshadowed with songs like Black Sunrise at the beginning. He even has a song on here that he brought in Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull to do flute on. But his stuff is pretty sort of electro poppy, also kind of stuff. But Mark is great. I'll be a Mark fan till I die. So, number 17, Magnetic Fields Quickies. So this is Stephen Merritt and his ragtag band of compatriots, and you get a Magnetic Fields album, and you know it's going to be dark, quirky, humorous, and funny. Um, this album in particular, it's all short songs, like a couple minutes, sometimes 20 seconds. But he's just got such a humorous sense of fun about it. I wish I were a prostitute again. I want to join a biker gang. You've got a friend in Beelzebub. The day the politicians died, and the biggest tits in history, which is about titmouses, funny little birds, not the other. I think the song titles kind of say it all, really, but it's just a fun record. All right, number 16. This was new to me this year. I did not know of these people, and this is their debut. Working Men's Club. It's Northern England alternative dance rock, sort of. Some mostly spoken word songs, but then some that are sung. It's the kind of record that you would have heard pumping out of New Order's Hacienda Club on a dark, sweaty night, I imagine. Kind of reminds me of like some of their earlier 80s records, or like Cabaret Voltaire or something like that, when they were really super groovy. It's just a great, and the last song goes on for like 10 minutes, and you're like, please don't end, please don't end. And then when it ends, you're like, oh, I want to hear that again. Sign of a good record, right? And that's a debut, so hopefully there's more from them. Number 15, Destroyer with Have We Met. I love Dan Bayar. Every one of his albums I've enjoyed to some extent, especially this last run since his Kaput album. It's keyboard based, sort of like art rock. He's sort of like a scruffy poetry professor reading like strange like haikus over and over to you again in music, but I just love it. I can't figure out what any of the songs are about most of the time, but that's part of the magic of it, is sort of like very stream of consciousness. So love Dan. Number 14, Pet Shop Boys, Hotspot. This album came out very early in the year, like January, so it feels like ages ago. But and interesting, it was called Hotspot because I think they were sort of more going for like the cell phone tower sort of thing. And who knew we'd be talking about coronavirus hotspots? They were supposed to go out on tour with New Order this year. That didn't happen, which was kind of a bummer. But all these songs are ruminations on sort of growing older and being a pop singer, growing older and dealing with like the youth culture. And how many other bands write songs about getting older? I feel like these two, Neil and Chris, are two of the most talented and underrated singer-songwriters outside of England in the world. That, well, maybe Japan. Um, they're just fantastic, and they have several albums now. West End Girls was their big hit in 1985 that kicked everything off, but I just love all of their work. So every time I see a Pet Shop Boys record coming my way, I'm like, oh, we're in for something special. Speaking of something special too, didn't think that Jarvis Cocker, was going to make another really great rock record, but he has with Beyond the Pale, number 13 for me this year. He was the lead singer of the band Pulp, sort of a Britpop band of the mid 90s. He's done some solo work since, and this is kind of like he's got sort of a band behind him here. But songs that are sort of political, obviously, he's always sort of political, songs about the environment. Funny, but dark, very dark, witty, humorous. Again, I love these catchwords because I think we all need to be doing a lot more laughing during all the tears lately. So, all right. Moving along, another similar compatriot to that, Baxter Dury, the Night Chancers. This is number 12 for me. He's Ian Dury's son, if you are familiar with Ian, and it's again mostly spoken word, dark kind of vocals, um, sort of about like the seedy side of nightlife. Counterpoint against a lot of female vocals, so there's kind of this back and forth conversation on there, and it's very funky sort of record, but alternative, not like Ohio Players, but more like Wolfgang Press or something like that. If you know any of those artists, it has a sort of a late night sense, like the pandemic is coming, but I still want to go out and do these terrible things. It's just a very interesting record. So, and thanks to the person who recommended that and Working Men's Club to me this year, because I would not have known about either of those. So, see, being in a record store, it sort of works both ways. I get recommendations from people, and then they hit me in a certain way, and then I share them with others. So, all right, number 11. The Doves, Universal Want. They hadn't made an album in probably 11 years, I think. They had, what, four albums originally, and then sort of took a long hiatus, and I missed them. And they were supposed to tour this year, and they couldn't, but that sucks. But if you're sort of into 90s British rock, early 2000s, northern stuff, I say northern when I mean northern British, I suppose Elbow or The Verve, things like that. It's kind of along those lines, but I missed them. I thought they were great. All right, top 10, Sparks, Steady Drip, Drip, Drip. The Mail Brothers, Ron and Russell, um, in their 70s now, I believe. Been doing this for 50 years. These guys, LA guys, brothers, made it glam rock breakthrough in the mid 70s in England, and have done so many different kinds of music since. It's probably hard to keep up with at times, but they deserve a lot more respect than they get. And their album a few years ago with Franz Ferdinand was great. So I don't know. I just, check out Sparks. If you like funny humor, dark, again, my favorite song on there is probably the closing track, which is Please Don't F Up My World. That's sung with a children's choir. Of course, right? So 2020. Anyway, all right. Number 9, Sandra Larquet, Patience. An album probably not a lot of people know, but it's a fantastic modern pop record. Sandra's been around now for, he's 25 years almost now of writing, recording stuff. Um, I think he gets lumped in with Britpop, but he's actually Norwegian. But this album has such incredible arrangements, and it's a breakup album. He'd been through divorce, then got into a relationship, and then that broke up. So he was really feeling it with this record. And there's a song called Put the Camera Down that was orchestrated by Van Dyke Parks of Brian Wilson, Beach Boys fame. So, but there's a lot of great pop tunes on there, and I say pop, I mean alternative pop or whatever. They're not. Uh, it's not like um, BTS or something like that. Okay, number 8, Sufjan Stevens, The Ascension. Man, I loved his album, The Age of Odds, and this is sort of the closest to that I've heard he's gotten. I love the cover art too. But his last record, Carrie and Lowell, was very intimate and personal, and this is a little more looking outward at the world and being sort of not happy with what he sees going on. It's more electronic than Carrie and Lowell. Sort of, if you knew The Age of Odds, that album, it's like a less chaotic sounding version of that, but quite good. Number 7, Wood Kids S16. You look at the cover and you think, what am I getting here? So it's been 7 years since Johan released a record, and when I saw this coming out, I was like, oh my gosh, another Wood Kid finally. And it's a really well produced, probably the best produced record I've heard this year, and with the arrangements and everything. It's dark. It sort of reminds me of like on Anthony and the Johnsons, Anahani, a less operatic version of that voice, mixed with like some of Nick Cave's more his more quiet balladry or something, but the string arrangements are just incredible. The mixes, the way things are produced and drop out, and it's just, and it's an album that people aren't talking about enough. Come on, where are the people? Listen. All right, maybe it's more out there than I realize. Who knows? We are in virtual land, right? So number 6, Gorillaz Song Machine, Volume 1. Boy, I hope there's more volumes. Damon Albarn from Blur continues his side project of Gorillaz, which I will now say maybe eclipsing in popularity the original band he was in. I'm not sure. But this is a fantastic record to just put on, and like song after song that just is like interesting, and I think he's getting knocked a little for it not being a concept record like Plastic Beach or like Demon Days, where they were a little bit more about like either, the environment or things relating to violence and racism or whatever. But this is just like a record just to show what a good album, a collection of songs can be. And when you have people on it like Elton John, Beck, St. Vincent, Peter Hook from New Order, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Robert Smith on the first track, which when you hear his voice come out on that track, it's like you start realizing how much you miss The Cure as with their any new music at all. So, all right, top 5. Number 5, Fiona Apple, Fetch the Bolt Cutters. This picture sort of encapsulates 2020 pretty well. This is probably number 1 on a lot of people's lists. For me, I love this record. I thought, again, it just shows what an individual artist she is. And she's the only person that sounds like that. And it sounds like it was made during the pandemic, but it was actually made before. And, she's banging on things around the house, and you can hear the dogs barking in the background, but it all sort of lends to the I'm at home sort of factor. And I think a lot of people, it resonated with a lot of people. But it's a pretty dark and jazzy record. She's super talented. I gotta give her credit for that. Not like she needs my approval. Number 4, Roisin Murphy, Roisin Machine. So you're like, what? I thought it was Rawson. No, it's Roisin. That's how you say that. You say Sinead O'Connor, right? Not Cinead. So, all right, Roisin. I've loved Roisin for a long time. She's the lead singer of a 90s band called Moloko. And they had a few records, and then she and Mark broke up and she went solo. And I think she's probably one of the most underrated modern soul singers out there. Who would think a white girl from Ireland would be an incredible soul singer, right? But she really is. And this album, the tracks from it were brought together over the course of like a decade or so, while she was making other albums. And it kind of has the feel of like a sort of a night out for somebody. It's got a very sort of heavy retro disco vibe to it, but sort of dark. And either they're sort of unraveling over the course of the evening or something, but it ends sort of like with this big build-up and euphoric kind of closing. So it really does feel like I'm at home and then I'm getting ready for like the time at the club, and then I'm at the club and I'm going crazy at the end. It's a really interesting record. I hope she makes more. I heard she's got another one that's almost done. So, all right, number 3, Jessie Ware. This is called What's Your Pleasure? So Jessie, I'd never really been really into her before this album. Her other records are serviceable R&B. Is that kind of like a put down. But this is a fantastic retro disco throwback. Also, that seems to be a theme for me here. But if you like that sort of like kind of early '80s Madonna feel, it's like 3 or 4 minute soul pop songs. One is better than the next. It's kind of hard picking out a favorite song because there are so many. I really advise that you check that out if you like just good pop music. All right. And I hope that she does more like this because, and she worked with James Ford a lot too, who produces like Arctic Monkeys. So it was interesting. All right. Number 2, Girl Called Eddie, been around. So Erin Moran, not the one from Happy Days, this one, New Jersey native who's now living in England. Took her 15 years to make this record. Her first album, I Loved, came out 2005 or so, produced by Richard Hawley of Pulp at the time. And this is sort of a return. I'm not sure. It just feels like life intervened, really. And she took her time making the best album that she could. And it paid off. And I think, there's a lot of retro Bacharach, Karen Carpenter isms mixed in here. I hear a little bit of Amy Mann, a little bit of the Chrissie Hynde of the Pretenders for sure. But it's just a great album. And people, because she released it self-released, I think a lot of people don't really know about it. It's sort of under the radar. And it's just got a very like nostalgic sort of lived in it's 70s FM vibe. If you grew up in that era or you love the 70s, it's kind of like just feels like it could have been one of those like, man, this is like the best album Carole King never wrote or something. Not like Tapestry wasn't that good or anything, but I mean, okay, I don't need any Carole King haters. All right, number 1 or lovers. Number 1. All right, this might come as a surprise to some of you, but and you might not even know what this is. So, and it's also a late bloomer this year. Is it cheesy that I'm choosing something that came out so late? Sometimes this happens. It's a surprise factor, but this album really hit me in a big way. And this is the Avalanches. We Will Always Love You. And you're like, who are the Avalanches? A lot of you probably know. But they've been around for about 20 years. This is the 3rd album. The second one took 16 years to make. It came out 2016. So this took a relatively short 4 years. But what a fantastic record this is. It's sort of like a modern soul record mixed with kind of like Daft Punk-isms. A lot of cut and paste of DJ culture, like what you would have heard on a De La Soul record. There's a lot of old soul voices brought in and sampled. They'll sample like things that would sound like an Otis Redding or an Aretha type singer, but then they'll sample Alan Parsons Project or Karen Carpenter or something like that. And then they'll mix it with modern singers and rappers. So you get people like Rivers Cuomo, Perry Farrell, Leon Bridges. So some newer, some like more 90s, I guess. Then you get like Karen O just doing a spoken word shout out. There's a lot of different sort of things here, but really great, great modern soul record, and it plays like a continuous listening experience for about 70 minutes. So not for the faint-hearted. Anyway, Avalanches, We Will Always Love You. Check it out. All right, that's enough. This has taken way too long. Thank you for your time and patience. I appreciate everything that you've done for us this year. It has been a trying year, and we hope moving on to next year, things can only get better in 2021, right? But we got the music. There was some great music. All right. Be well. Take care. See you soon.